Welcome, listeners, but take heed. We will say whatever we need
to share our knowledge, thoughts, and joy, and even things that do annoy.
Before we begin, please be aware, we have a tendency to swear.
You have been warned, make no mistake, so join us now.
We're for Fawkes' sake. Welcome to For Fawkes' Sake, a Harry Potter book movie compare and contrast podcast. I'm Ellen, and my co-host, who is adorably Hufflepuffing in the seat to my left, is Karlee.
That means drinking coffee in my socks. And I'm also wearing other clothes.
It's just socks. Coffee and socks, that's it.
Coffee and socks.
We're that kind of podcast.
Last episode was called Naked Harry. This episode's called
Naked Karlee. But she got her business socks on.
Ew. But let's fly into the Phoenix flashback. Last week, we covered the first half of Chapter 10, The House of Gaunt, and the lightly corresponding film scenes. Dumbledore gets Harry to go to the office to do private lessons. Harry's confused as usual, but eventually is pulled into Bob Ogden's memory. Harry and Dumble follow Bob to a dark house where they are greeted with the most unfriendly family by the name of Gaunt. Unless you're watching the movie, in which case you only see Harry enter the office before the scene completely shifts to a different memory altogether.
During episode 212, Naked Harry Potter, our Potter pondering was, how do you feel about book Dumbledore versus movie Dumbledore during their first private lesson?
Hello, my name is Zach Thurston, and this is my Potter pondering on how I feel the movie Dumbledore compared to the book Dumbledore when it came to the private lessons. The one thing I always found super cool about, now granted, just with anything in this comparison, when you compare the book to the movies, there's always a significant amount more detail in the books in just about every facet. But this one always I always really loved when they got together, because I always thought there's so much depth and really key story building pieces within those lessons. Obviously, they're learning about Voldemort and his childhood and his past, and the Horcruxes and how they were made and why they were made and all those things. And I just feel like the movie kind of skimmed over it, and it was very high level how they approached it. Whereas I liked in the books how Dumbledore laid the precedence that hey, some of these things that we're getting ready to do and I'm getting ready to teach you or show you are not necessarily fact. I think they're right, but I'm not 100% sure. But as he says in the books, his guesses are genuinely right. But I always thought that line was really cool, and I just thought that the depth again in the book of how in depth they went into his past and into his childhood was so much more significant than the movie, because the movie, they really don't show you all too much in those visions and in those private lessons. So yeah, I could probably go on forever about this one, but that's my Potter pondering. Thank you.
Hi, this is Jessica calling in my Potter pondering for this week. Richard Harris had the perfect goofy and serious Dumbledore down so well. He really got across book Dumbledore's ability to be silly and to relate to his young students while also having that badass no-nonsense side. But when Michael Gambon took over, he really felt like a darker version of Dumbledore, and it took some getting used to for sure. Not that he was bad and wasn't necessarily all his fault either. I know different directors and actors bring out different aspects of the characters, but it at least could have been a more mix between the two. By this point in the story, maybe we didn't need the sillier side to Dumbledore anymore, but the amount of yelling that Gambon's Dumbledore did just wasn't in character to me at all. And then when the question came up to Harry and Half-Blood about whether he's into Hermione or that he needs to shave because he's getting older, it comes off more awkward because we aren't used to seeing the more personable side to that character anymore, and we didn't really feel how close Harry was with Dumbledore. However, about Dumbledore asking Harry if he was into Hermione, I do have a headcanon that the professors make bets on who their students will end up with, and he needed to prove someone wrong. Like, a teacher who didn't know Harry as well was like, oh, well, he does spend a lot of time with Miss Granger. But Albus and Minerva were like, nah, it's probably going to be Ginny Weasley. So they placed bets, and Dumbledore was just checking if he was winning yet. But yeah, I mean, I do wish that they kept in more of the relationship between Harry and Dumbledore and just kept it a little bit more to character. I really would have preferred if Michael Gambon did a little bit more research into the character that he was playing, just so it could be a little bit more accurate to the book's description. But, I mean, we are going to get a third Dumbledore now soon, so we'll see.
Good morning, all, and here's my Potter pondering. I really did not like what we got with the first lesson between Dumbledore and Harry. No Gaunts, no Bob Ogden, not even getting to see Bob Ogden in his silly muggle outfit. We've never seen wizards in their silly muggle outfits. They all wear suits perfectly, apparently. Yeah, we got robbed of what we were supposed to see in that first lesson. I did like whimsical Dumbledore a little bit, but that's it.
Thank you so much for your responses.
Our trivia question last week was, how long was Morphin sentenced to Azkaban? Morphin was sentenced to 3 years.
Congratulations goes to Callista Whitewolf.
Yay!
She is at 9 weeks in a row, almost to double digits. It's amazing. Is she going to keep it going?
You never know. For now, let's dive into the second half of Chapter 10, The House of Gaunt, and the absolutely no corresponding film scenes.
Chapter 10, The House of Gaunt, Part 2. Mr. Ogden cleans up his nose and explains that he's there to see his son, confirming that was Morphin. The old man tells him it was, and then asks if he is pureblood. Ogden coldly tells him that's neither here nor there, which increases Harry's respect for the man. It seems to have a different effect on Gaunt, who offensively tells Ogden he's seen noses like his down in the village. Ogden says he doesn't doubt it if his son's been let loose on them, and asks to continue the discussion inside. Gaunt protests, and Ogden attempts to explain that he is there for Morphin and had sent an owl. Gaunt says he has no use for owls and doesn't open them, and Ogden retorts that he can hardly complain about getting no warning of visitors. He informs him he is there following a serious breach of wizarding law that occurred there that morning, and Gaunt cuts him off to begrudgingly allow him in the house. It seems to contain 3 tiny rooms. The main one, which serves as a kitchen and living room, and has 2 doors leading off of it. Morphin is sitting in a filthy armchair, playing with a live adder as he croons at it in Parseltongue. A scuffling sound from the corner near the open window makes Harry realize a girl in a ragged gray dress, exactly the color of the dirty stone wall behind her, is standing next to a steaming pot on a grimy stove. Her hair is lank and dull, and her eyes also stare in opposite directions. She looks a little cleaner than the men, but Harry doesn't think he's ever seen a more defeated person. When Ogden looks towards her, Gaunt introduces her as his daughter, Merrippy. Ogden says good morning to her, but she doesn't respond, instead giving her father a frightened look before turning back to the pots. Ogden gets back to business, explaining that they have reason to believe Morphin performed magic in front of a muggle late last night. Merrippy drops one of the pots with a loud clang, and Gaunt begins yelling at her to pick it up, mocking her for going after it like a muggle instead of using her wand to fetch it. Ogden is shocked and protests on Merrippy's behalf as she loses her grip on the pot again. This time she draws her wand and casts a spell that causes it to shoot away from her and crack in 2 as it hits the opposite wall. Morphin begins laughing, and Gaunt yells at her again, telling her to mend it and calling her a useless lump. She stumbles across the room, but before she can raise her wand again, Ogden casts Reparo to mend the pot for her. Gaunt looks like he might yell at Ogden too, but thinks better of it, and instead continues to bully his daughter, telling her it's lucky the nice man from the ministry is there, and saying that maybe he'll take her off his hands, and doesn't mind dirty squibs. Merrippy doesn't thank Ogden, just picks up the pot, returns it to the shelf, and tries to stay out of the way. Ogden attempts to return to the business at hand, and Gaunt cuts him off to say, so what if Morphin gave the muggle a bit of what was going to him? Ogden explains that Morphin broke wizarding law, and Gaunt mocks him before asking if it is illegal to teach a filthy muggle a lesson. Ogden informs him it is, and pulls a scroll of parchment from his pocket. Gaunt angrily asks if that is his sentence, and as Ogden begins to explain that it is a summons to the ministry for a hearing, Gaunt becomes more angry and asks who he thinks he is, summoning his son anywhere. Ogden informs him that he is the head of the magical law enforcement squad, and Gaunt goes into a full rage, asking if he thinks they are scum who will come running when the ministry tells them. He calls him a filthy little mudblood and asks if he knows who he's talking to. Ogden responds that he's under the impression he's speaking to Mr. Gaunt, and Gaunt roars back that he is, and holds up his middle finger to show an ugly black stone ring that he claims is engraved with the Peveril coat of arms, and has been in their family for centuries, proving they are pureblood all the way. Ogden tells him that's beside the point, but with a howl of rage, Gaunt runs to his daughter and grabs a gold chain around her neck to drag her over to show him a heavy gold locket that had belonged to Slytherin. He yells that they are the last living descendants of Salazar Slytherin and asks what he says to that. Ogden is too concerned about Merope to respond, but Gaunt lets her go and tells him not to talk to them like they are dirt on his shoes, because they have generations of pureblood in their line, which is more than he can say, no doubt. Gaunt spits on the floor at Ogden's feet, and Morphin cackles again as Merope huddles by the window, hiding her face behind her hair. Ogden tries to reason with Gaunt, telling him their ancestors have nothing to do with the matter at hand. He is there because of Morphin and the muggle he accosted the previous night. He reads from the scroll that Morphin jinxed or hexed the muggle, causing him to break out into painful hives. Morphin giggles, and his father snaps at him in Parseltongue to be quiet before defiantly asking Ogden why it matters if he did, as he expects they've wiped the muggle's face and memory clean for him. Ogden tries to say that isn't the point. The issue is it being an unprovoked attack. Gaunt calls Ogden a muggle lover and spits on the floor again. Ogden decides the conversation isn't getting them anywhere, and begins to clearly state the expectations of Morphin attending the hearing on the 14th of September, but is interrupted by the clopping sound of horses and laughing voices drifting through the window. Gaunt freezes at the sound, Morphin hisses, and Merope raises her head. Harry notices her face has gone white. A girl's voice clearly rings out, calling the hovel an eyesore and asking Tom if his father can clear it away. A young man's voice responds that it isn't theirs, saying the cottage belongs to an old tramp called Gaunt and his children. He calls the son quite mad, telling her she should hear the stories they tell in the village. The girls laugh and Morphin starts to get up. His father hisses at him to keep his seat, and the girl's voice calls out again, asking if someone has nailed a snake to the door. Tom confirms that she is right and says it'll be the son since he's not right in the head. He tells her not to look at it, calls her Cecilia darling, and Morphin whispers to his sister in Parseltongue, pointing out that he called the girl darling and wouldn't have her anyway. Their father joins the conversation, wanting to know what Morphin said, and Morphin tells him that Merope likes looking at the muggle, and last night was hanging out the window waiting for him to ride home. Gaunt is appalled that his pure-blood daughter, descendant of Slytherin, is hankering after a filthy, dirt-veined muggle. Merope frantically shakes her head, and Morphin cackles that he got him as he went by, and he didn't look so pretty covered in hives. Gaunt loses control and screams that his daughter is a disgusting little squib and filthy little blood traitor as his hands close around her throat. Harry and Ogden yell no at the same time, and Ogden raises his wand and casts Relatio. Gaunt is thrown backward, away from Merope, and Morphin leaps out of his chair and charges Ogden with his bloody knife. Ogden runs for his life, and Dumbledore indicates that they should follow. Harry does, hearing Merope's screams echo in his ears. They watch as Ogden collides with a chestnut horse ridden by a very handsome, dark-haired young man. Both he and the pretty girl on a gray horse roar with laughter, and Dumbledore tells Harry that will do, taking him by the elbow. They soar weightlessly through darkness and land back in Dumbledore's office. Harry immediately asks about the girl at the cottage, and Dumbledore assures him that she survived. He sits behind his desk and gestures for Harry to sit as well, as he explains that Ogden apparated back to the Ministry and was back with reinforcements in 15 minutes. Both Morphin and his father attempted to fight and were arrested. As Morphin had a record of Muggle attacks, he was sentenced to 3 years. When Dumbledore says Marvolo received 6 months, Harry notes the name with interest. Pleased that Harry is keeping up, Dumbledore confirms that that man was Voldemort's grandfather, and that the 3, Marvolo, Morphin, and Merope, were the last of the Gaunts. A very ancient wizarding family known for instability and violence that flourished through generations due to their habit of marrying their own cousins. The family gold was squandered before Marvolo was even born, leaving him in squalor and poverty, with a nasty temper, plenty of arrogance and pride, and a couple of heirlooms that meant just as much to him as his son did, and more than his daughter. At the mention of Marvolo's daughter, Harry inquires about Merope being Voldemort's mother. Dumbledore confirms that she was, and mentioned that they got a glimpse of his father as well. Harry is shocked to realize it was the man on the horse that Morphin attacked, in complete disbelief that he and Merope would ever fall in love and end up married. Dumbledore reminds Harry that she was a witch and likely had more power than what she demonstrated while being terrorized by her father. Once Marvolo and Morphin were in Azkaban and she was alone and free for the first time, she would have been able to give full rein to her abilities and plot her escape from her desperate life. He asks if Harry can think of any measure Merope could have taken to make Tom Riddle forget his Muggle companion and fall in love with her instead. Harry suggests the Imperius Curse, or a love potion, and Dumbledore agrees, saying he's inclined to think she used a love potion. He thinks it would have seemed more romantic, and would not have been too difficult to persuade Riddle to take a drink of water on a hot day as he was riding by alone. However she did it, in a few months from the scene they just witnessed, little Hangleton enjoyed a huge scandal when the squire's son ran off with the tramp's daughter. Even more shocked than the whole village was Marvolo, who returned home expecting to find his daughter dutifully waiting for him. Instead, he found an inch of dust and her farewell note explaining what she had done. Everything he could find from that point on suggests he never mentioned her name or existence again, and the shock seems to have led to an early death, as he did not see Morphin return home. Harry asks about Merope, since he knows she died, and Voldemort was raised in an orphanage. Dumbledore confirms that is the case, but also says they need to do some guesswork here. It seems that within a few months of their runaway marriage, Tom Riddle returned home without a wife and talked about being hoodwinked and taken in. Dumbledore figures he meant he was under an enchantment that had been lifted, though he didn't use those words for fear of being thought insane. The villagers assumed Merope had pretended she was pregnant, and he married her for that reason. Harry points out that she did have his baby, and Dumbledore replies that it was a year after they were married. Tom Riddle left her while she was still pregnant. Harry wonders why the love potion stopped working, and Dumbledore theorizes that Merope loved her husband and didn't want to continue enslaving him by magical means. He thinks she made the choice to stop giving him the potion, having convinced herself he had truly fallen in love with her in return, or would stay for the baby's sake. Neither happened, as he never saw her again and never cared to discover what became of his son. Dumbledore then tells Harry he thinks that will do for tonight, and though Harry stands, he doesn't leave yet. Instead, he asks if it is important to know all about Voldemort's past, and about it having something to do with the prophecy. Dumbledore says he thinks it is very important and has everything to do with the prophecy. Though Harry is confused, he feels reassured, and then asks if he is allowed to share what he's learned with Ron and Hermione. Dumbledore hesitates, but then says that Mr. Weasley and Miss Granger have proven themselves trustworthy, but that he shouldn't share it with anyone else, as it would not be good for word to get out about how much he knows or suspects about Lord Voldemort's secrets. Harry assures his headmaster he will make sure it is only Ron and Hermione and bids him good night. As he turns away, he notices an ugly gold ring set with a large, cracked black stone and asks about it, remembering that he had been wearing it the night they visited Slughorn. Dumbledore says he was, and Harry asks about it being the same ring Marvolo Gaunt showed Ogden. Dumbledore tells Harry it is the very same, prompting Harry to ask if he has always had it. Dumbledore informs him he acquired it very recently, just before he came to fetch him from his aunt and uncle's. Harry asks if that was around the same time he injured his hand, and though Dumbledore confirms that is the case, he again tells Harry he will hear the story another time and says goodnight.
And absolutely none of that happened in the movie. Wasn't even hinted at, not alluded to, not even thought of, not dusted at, not even a little sprinkle.
No sneeze. Nothing. Nothing.
Any,
Not even a tickle.
Not even a mention of the Gaunts. Of all things. Like, you couldn't even mention their name.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
No, just
okay.
no.
Nothing.
Just no.
nothing.
And it is so much that was left out.
And it's so important.
So important. I don't even understand how they were like, nah, we don't need this. I don't get it. I literally cannot wrap my head around it.
Who made that decision? David Yates. What the hell?
Ew, David.
You, David.
So we pick the book chapter back up right after Ogden has healed his nose and cleans up the excess pus. Blech.
Oof.
And he tries to explain to Mr. Gaunt, who has just sent his son inside. And I do want to note that for the majority of this chapter, he is referred to as Mr. Gaunt. We do not get his first name yet.
Not until Dumbledore says
It really builds up a very nice bit of suspense
it's
and
like, why are we
reveal
watching
at
this?
the end. Yes.
Why are we watching it? Why are we reading this?
Why aren't we watching this is
aren't
the
we
real
watching
question.
It is true. It is true.
So he had just sent Morphin inside, and Ogden explains that he is there to see his son. That was Morphin, yes. And Gaunt's just like, yeah, it was. Are you pureblood?
That's neither here nor there.
Exactly. And like you mentioned last week, this increases Harry's respect for him. He's very blasé about the bullshit that Gaunt keeps spewing.
Yeah, which I like.
Yeah, it's great.
And then Gaunt says, I feel like I've seen noses like yours down in the village. And Ogden has this quip back like,
I don't doubt it if your son's been let loose on them.
Which is hilarious.
And he's literally trying to tell him that he thinks he looks similar to the
I
muggles
know.
in town. And
Ogden's
just like,
I'm not dealing with this.
yeah, they probably have pus-filled dripping noses too because of your fucking son.
Yeah. I love him.
Yeah.
He's like a Neville-esque character to me. Like, chubby, little, stubby-legged man in his little bathing suit. And then he's like, no, I'm not dealing with you.
doing this bullshit.
I'm way better of a wizard than you. Back up.
Right? And he just sort of like lets the bullshit roll off his shoulders, gives the sassy comebacks.
He's trying to
and is like,
remain
hey, let's
professional.
move this inside so we can have this discussion properly. And Gaunt's like, why? And Ogden says, again, I'm here to speak about Morphin and speak to Morphin. I sent an owl.
I don't read owls.
I love this whole exchange. She's like, then you have no excuse to complain about not getting notice of visitors.
Exactly.
Can I try that again? I totally said
Yes,
whatever.
it's
He's like,
fine.
then you have no reason to complain about not having warning of visitors. I literally sent you warning. You ignored it. You don't get to be surprised. This is on you.
Don't get to attack me when I come to your house. I told you I was coming. Crazy.
And then he explains that he's there because there was a serious breach of wizarding law that occurred there very early that morning or late the previous night, depending on how you want to look at it. And I feel like him announcing this very loudly is what made Gaunt be like, fine, whatever, come in. But he's not happy about it.
Not at all.
So they get inside this cottage, and it appears to be 3 tiny rooms because they're in the main one, which doubles as a kitchen and a living room. And then there are 2 doors leading off of that. For all we know, there could be more doors leading off of that because I don't want to know what that living situation is,
I assume
bedroom-wise.
Morphin and Mr. Gaunt sleep in the same room in one.
I'm a little more concerned that it might be Mr. Gaunt and Merope.
Oh, Lord. No, he has no time for that. I'm intrigued who his wife was. I really want more Gaunt information.
Yeah, not less movie. We wanted more.
Yeah, you, David.
So in the sitting room kitchen, you've got Morphin sitting in a disgusting armchair. Like, everything about this place is dirty. But in this moment, he's playing with a live snake, and he's just singing to it in parcel
it's an adder.
Yeah, it's an adder.
I like adders.
He's saying, hissy, hissy, little snaky, slither on the floor. You be good to Morphin, or he'll nail you to the door.
I don't like that.
Not a brilliant lyricist, but definitely effectively creepy.
Yep. But he's saying it in parcel tongue, so like all Bob Ogden hears is.
I wonder if it's like a musical sounding hiss.
Maybe, since he's kind of like rhyming. Maybe.
Interesting.
That's freaky. Ugh.
Right? Almost as creepy as hearing a kid recite a poem.
1, 2, Freddy's coming for you.
There are so many instances where a kid is just reciting a poem super creepily for horror things because it's effective.
It is effective.
But I feel like hissing in a cadence would
just
probably
as
be on
creepy.
par.
I mean, how old is Morphin? Maybe 20?
I mean, they're definitely young, but I don't know if they're still considered kid status. She has a wand, so theoretically you'd think that she was through school and finished with it.
But I don't think they went to school. I think they were home taught.
Probably.
Which, why do you get to call your daughter a squib if you didn't help teach her any of the magic?
Although, being descendant from Slytherin, you think that going to Slytherin school might be kind of a big deal? I don't know.
I would think so too, but that's also the school that ostracized him.
True.
So, I don't know.
The Gaunts at least used to send their kids there.
Yes, because we see ominous.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's a choice. You have to have money to go to the school, though, right?
I don't think so. I think you have to have it to buy your books and such, but the education itself, I'm pretty sure, is covered.
Oh, okay. Well, that's nice.
Yeah.
U.S., learn something.
I mean, technically our education is also covered if you go to public schools.
Except higher education.
Well, there is that. Anyway, there's a scuffling sound that causes Harry to turn towards the corner near the open window that they had seen the steam smoke coming out of. And it takes a second, but Harry realizes that there's a girl standing there because her ragged gray dress is the exact color of the stone wall behind her. So she's not even immediately noticeable. She's got this very lank hair. It's dull. Her eyes are also doing that stare in the opposite direction thing. And the one thing that he can really say for her is that she looks cleaner than the men, but far more defeated. Like, he doesn't think he's ever seen a more defeated person.
That makes me so sad.
Yeah. Oh my God, rereading this and like really focusing on it to write the summary, I'm like, holy fuck, she had a really sad life.
Yeah, she probably didn't get to go to school. When her mom died, she probably took over all the cleaning and cooking. And
oh, absolutely.
Clearly, the cleaning's not going very well. Do they have running water? Maybe they don't have, I mean, but you should be able to do augmente. But
yeah,
still, it's just not a good plan, Stan.
Yeah.
It's rough.
Well, and just like Harry, that scuffling sound causes Ogden to look that way too. So when he looks questioningly at her, so this is when Gaunt introduces her as his daughter, Merope. And it's honestly the first time we actually get her name, but it's also really the first time we see her. So it's all there. And doesn't mean anything to us yet.
Nope.
Ogden is kind and he says good morning to her, but she doesn't say anything back. She just kind of looks at her father super scared.
God, this whole scene is so stressful.
I know. And then she goes back to like messing with the pots and pans above the stove. So Ogden just like, okay, whatever, and goes back to explaining that they think Morphin performed magic in front of and on a muggle the previous night. And this news causes Merope to drop one of the pots that she was messing with. And Gaunt just begins screaming at her, telling her to pick it up, and then starts talking about grubbing on the floor like a muggle when she tries to bend over to pick it up instead of just using her wand.
Using my hands is beneath me?
Right.
I'm so confused, sir.
And Ogden is like, what the fuck, man? And tries to protest on her behalf because she does pick up the pot with her hands And the way that her father is speaking to her causes her to drop it again.
And it breaks.
Well, not yet.
Oh, it doesn't break
No.
yet.
But she drops it again, and this time she tries to draw her wand to summon it back to her, but she screws it up and sends it flying away from her, and it hits the opposite wall from her and cracks into two, which makes her brother start laughing because Morphin is an asshole, and Gaunt, who is a bigger asshole if anything, starts yelling at her even more, telling her to mend it, saying she's a useless lump. And she does, like, she's not about to try summoning it again. That already fucked up once. So she stumbles across the room, tries to raise her wand to repair it, and before she can, Ogden uses Reparo and fixes it for her. Gaunt has a brief moment where he thinks he might yell at Ogden for interfering, but isn't apparently that dumb.
That's something, I guess.
So he just decides that he's going to keep bullying his daughter instead and says, oh, lucky for you, the nice man from the ministry is here. Maybe he'll take you off my hands. Maybe he doesn't mind dirty squibs.
Does he say this in Parseltongue?
It doesn't specify that he did.
I, for some reason, thought that he did. But I could see him just saying that.
It doesn't specify in this moment that he did. And a lot of the other things he said when he said them in Parseltongue, it did.
Yeah.
Either way,
It's still shitty.
I feel like he may have said this one in English.
Just so Ogden could hear it?
Yeah, just in the off chance Ogden would be like, yes,
Yeah, I'll take her.
come
Bye.
with me. Right?
Come here, sweetheart.
But Maripy doesn't even thank Ogden. She's too terrified to do anything at this point. She just picks up the pot and puts it back and just, like, tries to disappear into the wall, essentially, which she's already halfway there with that dress. So there's something for going in her favor, I guess.
Gosh.
So then Ogden tries to get back on task and starts again to say, we're here because we have reason to believe that Morphin did magic. And Gaunt is just like, who cares if Morphin gave a muggle a bit of what was coming to him? And I was like, well, he broke wizarding law.
Well, the ministry cares, sir.
And Gaunt's like, oh, so it's illegal to teach a filthy muggle a lesson?
Yes.
Right? I love the way Ogden's handling this. He's just like, unfortunately it is. Like, but sarcastically.
Yeah.
Sorry to say.
I mean, I feel like whatever Morphin did to Tom Sr. probably would be frowned upon even if it was done to a wizard. It's not really acceptable.
Right. So yeah, he's like, yeah, it
is.
is illegal. And he pulls a scroll of parchment out of his pocket. And Gaunt's like, is this his sentence? You know, starting to get real fired up like he wasn't already. But Ogden's just like, no, this is his summons to the ministry to attend a hearing about the incident. And Gaunt's like, who the fuck do you think you are summoning my son anywhere? And Ogden's like, I'm the head of the magical law enforcement squad. If anyone's going to summon your son anywhere, it is literally me, dude. It is literally me.
I don't understand.
But Gaunt is just full on raging here. Like, just, what, do you just think we're scum who are going to come running when the ministry tells us to? And
It's kind of how it works.
yeah, he calls Ogden a filthy little mudblood, wants to know if he knows who he's talking to. I love this response. He was like, I was under the impression that I was speaking to Mr. Gaunt.
It's a good line.
And Gaunt's like, yeah, I am. And I love this too because he holds up his middle finger. And Harry at first thinks that he's just giving him a rude hand gesture
I love
before
that.
realizing that he's trying to show him this really ugly black stone ring that he says is engraved with the Peveril coat of arms. And it doesn't mention at this point in the book, but if you were paying attention earlier, this ring sounds familiar.
Yeah.
At the end of the chapter, they specifically talk about it. It's not brought up yet, but just look at this fucking ring on my finger.
Ellen's just flicking me off.
I
in
just
the
flicked
studio.
Carly off to
It's fine.
give it a little flavor. But he's saying that it proves that for centuries they have been pureblood all the way back. So apparently Peveril is supposed to be a name that you know. We
I
have
mean,
not
that's
heard
not-
it yet, but we will.
Something to be so proud of, because as Hermione pointed out, if there were only pureblood wizards left, there wouldn't be many left. I think Ron says it in the second one if they didn't start marrying
somebody
muggles.
says something
Even the Weasleys are a little bit inbred, right? Because they're like fourth cousins. It's a little gross.
I mean, they're all redheads, so you know that they couldn't have ventured too far.
Yeah.
The odds that there were 2 pureblood wizarding families that were all redheads.
Yeah, you know. I think because Sirius says he's related to Molly on one side of his family and Arthur on the other. So they definitely are
There's a
connected.
lot of overlap.
There is, yes.
But at least in that instance, it's been watered down enough that you're not getting anything crazy going
eyes
on like this. But anyway, Ogden, being Sassy Ogden, is like, that is beside the point. Like, nobody fucking cares that you're pureblood because he sees it the way that we do. It makes sense. And Gaunt is not taking this at all. He just howls. He's so angry. Runs to Merope.
Oh, this stresses me
And
out.
Harry literally thinks he's about to start strangling his daughter.
I mean, he kind of does.
Yeah, but he thinks that that's his deliberate goal
He's
here.
not thinking, yes.
But he instead grabs a gold chain that's around her neck, uses the chain to drag her over to Ogden so he can shove this heavy gold locket in his face and talk about how it belonged to Slytherin, saying that they're the last living descendants of Salazar Slytherin. And what do you say to that?
I say let your child go.
Right? That's literally, Ogden has nothing to say about them being descendants of Slytherin because A, he doesn't care, and because B, he's way more concerned about his daughter being strangled. Although at this point, Gaunt has already let her go, and it's just like, so don't talk to us like we're just dirt on your shoes. We have generation of purebloods in our line, which is more than you can say, no doubt. And then he spits on the floor at Ogden's feet.
And spits.
Yeah, classy. Which makes Morphin cackle again because dude is not right in the head.
Well, he's got some inbreeding problems, so.
There is that. And then Merope is just like huddling by the window massaging her throat because she was basically just strangled by a necklace.
Sweet girl, I'm so sorry for you.
Using her lank hair to hide her face. Like,
I'm sorry.
It's very easy to feel sorry for Merope and understand why she did what she did, even though it's shady as fuck. So first, Ogden does try to attempt to reason with Gaunt. He's like, your ancestors have nothing to do with what's going on right now. I'm here because of Morphin and the muggle that he accosted last night. He starts to read from the scroll exactly what it was that Morphin did.
And he giggles.
Yeah, he's like, he jinxed or hexed a muggle that caused him to break out in painful hives. And again, Morphin laughs.
I like that it specifically says he giggles.
Yeah,
because he's like,
giggles. So yes, lots of remorse there. Although his father does yell at him in parcel tongue, it specifies to be quiet. And then it's like, why does it matter if he did? You've already wiped the muggle's face and memory clean, I'm sure. And again, Ogden's like, that's not the point, man. The issue is this is an unprovoked attack on a muggle who can't defend himself against wizards. And then, of course, you have Gaunt, who's like, I had you pegged immediately for a muggle lover, and then spits on the floor. Again, because that's what he needs is, more gross stuff in his house.
It also sounds like this is not the first time Morphin has attacked a muggle. So,
oh, definitely not.
Like, this is a silly argument, but whatever.
Yeah. And that's exactly what Ogden comes to the conclusion of. He's just like, this is not going anywhere. The law clearly states that he can't do what he did, and now the expectation is that Morphin attend this hearing on September 14th.
What would he wear?
Who fucking cares? Naked Morphin.
Naked.
I like...
I'm just like, do they actually have clothes? Like, what's his dad wearing?
Rags, apparently.
I mean, maybe not. Maybe he dresses himself pretty nicely and his kids are dressed like garbage.
He could be dressed nicely, but
nicely.
is still dirty, I'm sure.
Wear like hobo clothes.
Definitely. But Ogden doesn't get very far into talking about the hearing because they're interrupted by the clomping sound of horse hooves and laughter that is drifting through the window, which causes Mr. Gaunt to just completely freeze and look towards the window. Morphin hisses, and Merope actually lifts her head. Her face has gone white.
I'm so sad.
And then amidst the laughter is a girl's voice that very loudly starts talking about an eyesore and asks Tom if his father can't clear that hovel away. Then you hear the young man's voice in response, which presumably belongs to Tom, saying it's not ours. The cottage belongs to an old tramp called Gaunt and his children. Fucking saying that loud enough. I mean, I guess he doesn't necessarily know the window's open, but dude, you're so not classy.
I wish she had gone out and met somebody who loved her for her.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't seem like he's not... Like, you don't even take your son. You don't take time. Like, you still have a child. Like, I know we'll get into the situation. He just doesn't seem like a good guy.
Yeah, we'll talk about it when we get there.
Yeah.
I don't think he is a good guy, though.
Though there are some extenuating circumstances. Yes.
I think that he was very pretty, and it led to
An infatuation.
An infatuation in a very, very, very deep fantasy life that was Merope's only escape from shit.
She's like Tina in Bob's Burgers, and she's writing her erotic friend fiction.
Basically. Like, she's not stable. It's not her fault, but she's not stable. And I think that she built this entire fantasy world around this very good-looking man that would ride past her home.
Yeah. And literally has never said a word to him, I'm sure.
So Tom also calls the son quite mad, saying you should hear the stories they tell in the village. And then again, the girl laughs, and Morphin, naturally being the one who is quite mad and being talked about in this moment, starts to get up, and his dad again hisses at him in parcel tongue to keep his seat. I know they're riding horses and probably not like right next to each other, but fucking keep your voice down, bitch.
Oh, I always had the impression that they were like in a horse-drawn carriage.
No,
and,
they're
like,
literally
Tom
riding
was...
horses.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I always had the impression that was what the case, and they were sitting next to each other in the thing.
He is on one horse
And she's
on
the
the other.
Okay.
Because they describe the horses. And I think I put it in here, so we'll get to it. But
Cecilia, darling. It's just insane.
yeah.
Very loud.
But yeah, again, so the girl's voice calls out again. I'm like, what? Like, why are you being so loud, bitch? But
Maybe they don't think they're home.
I don't know.
Or they just
Harry
don't care.
didn't
They
think-
have money.
They clearly don't care. But she wants to know if someone nailed a snake to the door. And Tom's just like, yeah, that'll be the son. Like I said, not right in the head. Don't look at it, Cecilia, darling.
Cecilia, darling.
And Morphin, in parcel tongue, like I said, it specifies when it is.
Yeah.
Morphin says he called her darling. He wouldn't have you anyway. And now you've got Mr. Gaunt being like, what?
Do what?
What did you say? And naturally, Morphin outs his sister, saying that she likes to look at the muggle. The night before, she was literally hanging out the window waiting for him to ride home so she could see him, get a glimpse of him.
Am sad.
And Gaunt is just like, my pure-blood daughter descended of Slytherin is hankering after a filthy dirt-veined muggle?
I like your Gaunt voice. Yes,
I can't do a hiss, so that's my version of it, yeah. And Merope is just desperately trying to deny this, but again, too scared to talk, so all she's doing is shaking her head. And Morphin's just laughing, cackling, as it says, saying that he got him as he went by, and he didn't look so pretty when he was covered in hives.
I hate that. It's like when you get really pissed off at your sibling and you like tell your parents a big secret that you were keeping about them, and then you're like, oh fuck.
Right.
But he doesn't have the oh fuck situation. He's
No,
just
he
like,
does not
ha
care at
ha,
all.
I got you. Sucks to suck.
I think he's more gloating that he got the muggle.
Yeah.
I don't think he thinks that much of his sister at all. I don't think he considers her
She's a
feelings
lady.
or anything. There is that. Anyway,
Good.
if you hadn't have already thought that Gaunt was just losing his shit, he somehow turns the volume up.
It'd be like that.
And now he's just screaming that his daughter is a disgusting little squib, a filthy little blood traitor, and he does literally go choke her. So that was kind of foreshadowing that Harry thought he was going to choke her, and now he's choking her. And I love this because at the exact same time, Harry and Ogden go, no! But
This leads me to believe that Dumbledore has watched this already.
absolutely he has. I don't know that Dumbledore would react, though. He's a pretty cool cucumber.
I mean, he knows he can't change anything that's happening
Right.
in this, so
Yeah.
yeah. Poor
And I mean,
dude.
Harry can't either, so all he does is yell. But then Ogden does actually use his wand to cast Relatio, so that Gaunt not only has to release Merope, he is thrown backwards.
Good.
which causes Morphin to jump out of his chair and run at Ogden with his bloody knife. Naturally, Ogden runs for his life. Like, what else do you do in that situation? You don't really stick around.
I like that Dumbledore's just like,
We should probably go too.
He's just like calm.
Yeah. And so Harry does, and as they're leaving, he just hears Merope's screaming echo in his ears.
Well, because I bet at this point she's like, I'm just going to get the shit beat out of me.
Well, yeah.
Because he left. My dad got thrown against the wall, and my brother's over here with a knife. He's probably going to stab me.
I would be absolutely horrified. Who knows what they did do to her? Because we don't get that
there's only
detail.
like 10 minutes.
All we know is that she survived. Like, we don't really
he
know
does
what
say-
happened.
He does only say, oh, she survived.
Yeah, so they go out the door. They watch as Ogden runs right into a chestnut horse that is being ridden by a very handsome, dark-haired young man. And both he and a very pretty girl on a gray horse start laughing because shitty people. Now, granted, if somebody came running out of a cottage wearing a striped bathing suit...
Honestly, I'd be like, are you okay?
Right. But I feel like at the same time, it would be hard to hold back a smile. Like, what the fuck is happening right now?
What's going on?
I can't completely blame them, but the fact that they don't even once be like, are you okay?
Yeah.
Anything like that.
I mean,
at
he
all.
runs into a horse. Running into a horse hurts.
Right. And I'm sure that Tom doesn't remember this in any way, shape, or form because that was the goal. But if it wasn't Ogden specifically, it was on his orders that they got rid of his boils and cleaned his memory.
Yeah.
Like, so Ogden has literally done this dude a solid, and he's just a dirtbag.
He'd be like that.
Yeah. So Dumbledore's just like, okay, that'll do. And he takes him by the elbow, and they weightlessly make their way back into Dumbledore's office.
Do you just be like, I'm ready to go?
I feel like there's got to be some part of your consciousness that is aware that you're standing somewhere else with your face in a thing. Then
Yeah.
all you have to do is like make that effort to lift your head.
Yeah. Okay.
And
That
then
makes sense.
you do the like float through darkness.
Yeah.
And then he finds himself back in Dumbledore's office, which is now fairly dark because it's twilight. And
No, it's not. It's Harry Potter.
it's twilight time.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That is the time of evening.
Sure.
But Harry, being the good person that he is immediately like, what about the girl at the cottage?
Oh, that's nice, Harry.
And Dumbledore says that she survived. So we know, and obviously because we learn more about her in this moment, we definitely know that she survived. And then he sits back down and, you know, invites Harry to sit as well and tells him that Ogden apparated back to the ministry and was back within 15 minutes with reinforcements. And then, of course, Morphin and his father both tried to fight and ended up
Dumb.
arrested.
Dumb.
Since Morphin had that record of Muggle attacks, he was sentenced to 3 years in Azkaban.
Which was our trivia question.
And then Dumbledore says Marvolo received 6 months.
And Harry perks up.
Yeah, Harry's just like, Marvolo? I know that name. And this, like I said, is the first time in the whole chapter
they've
he
said
is
his
not
name.
Mr. Gaunt. And I love that reveal. Like, it was really cool to get to this point the first time. Reading it the first time and just be like, oh, fuck, that's why we're seeing this memory.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that's part of the magic of it too. Like, you can't recreate that moment. Once you've read it once and you know.
You can't recreate the first time you read it.
Now, sometimes when you reread it,
And you
you
miss
might
something.
pick up something you missed the first time. But this was a big thing, and they draw attention to it. So if you missed this the first time around, you just weren't paying attention.
True.
But it was like oh, fuck, Marvolo. Like, that's why we're in this memory. And
You kind
That's-
of you have the realization along with Harry.
well, yeah, and it's so good, and it really like pulls you into the story and makes you feel like part of it.
I am Harry Potter. What
Right?
are you talking about?
And that's exactly what Harry's doing too. Oh, fuck, Marvolo. And Dumbledore's just like, pleased to see that you're keeping up. Yes, that was indeed Voldemort's grandfather. And the three of them, Marvolo, Morphin, and Merope, were the last of the Gaunts. He calls them a very ancient wizarding family that, like I said, is not really known for anything positive. They're known for their instability and violence. it flourished through generations because they had a habit of marrying their own cousins. So they were just taking like the worst of themselves and
just putting more into one person.
yeah, and they're just like breeding it.
Ominous says that in the game.
Yeah.
He talks about how trash his family is and how much he dislikes them, and that's why he doesn't like the dark arts. And all of this stuff, all the inbreeding and stuff led to him being blind.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me that maybe there isn't a way to fix his blindness. It's like you have to recreate ocular things for his eyes to work. I don't know.
Yeah,
Give him
and
new eyes.
knowing what caused that though, like would his DNA just fuck up new eyes?
Oh, that's true. Maybe.
Like,
I don't know.
It's that's a lot of generations of yeesh.
Yeah.
I don't really know how to word that otherwise.
Yeah.
And then like you had mentioned last week at the end of our episode compare and contrast section last week is they once were a very wealthy family, but that money was just squandered before Marvolo was ever even born. So he was born into poverty, had basically nothing but a nasty temper, a lot of arrogance, and definitely some inbreeding, like,
and pride.
and for some reason a lot of pride about all of that. I don't know why.
I am so intrigued that he didn't take time to like go and maybe sell. I know that the heirlooms are important.
Yeah.
I know that they're important.
Well, that's like the one thing that he had that was actually worth anything was that ring
And the
and the necklace. And they clearly meant a lot to him because they proved his pure blood status. So I don't know that he could have parted with them. And as
Maybe
Dumbledore words it, those heirlooms meant just as much to him as his son did, and clearly more than his daughter did.
Oh, that makes me so sad. It's a mess.
And then when he mentions Marvolo's daughter, Harry's just like, wait, does that mean Merope is Voldemort's mother?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. And Dumbledore says, yeah, she was. And we also got a glimpse of his father. And then Harry's just like, wait, the handsome man on the horse? Like, they ended up married? Like, those are like the least two likely people to ever fall in love and get married.
And you forget that she was a witch.
Yeah, that's exactly what Dumbledore said. He's like, you're forgetting that she was a witch and probably had more power than what we witnessed in this memory because of how stifled she was being terrorized by her father.
And brother, honestly.
And brother, really, yeah. And he thinks, like he had mentioned before, he's getting into the guesswork and theorizing, but he thinks that once Marvolo and Morphin were in Azkaban and out of her hair, she had that opportunity to be free and really take full reign of her abilities.
Yeah.
Which then led to her plotting her escape, which, due to her instability, this plot was rooted in her fantasy about Tom Riddle Sr.
Poor choice of people.
And Dumbledore says to Harry, can you think of any way that Merope could have made Tom Riddle forget all about Cecilia Darling and fall in love with her instead? To which Harry's like, oh, yeah, she could have used the Imperious Curse or a love potion.
She is a Gaunt. She would know how to use that Imperious Curse.
Absolutely. And Dumbledore says, yes, I do think that she would be more inclined to use a love potion.
It is more romantic.
It would seem more romantic than like physically having to control somebody.
Yeah, because then you'd like literally have to be on them all the time.
She'd like constantly
that
know
dirty.
that she was controlling him. Whereas with the love potion, it plays into the fantasy a lot better.
Yeah.
And he also doesn't think it would have been too difficult for her to greet Tom Riddle on a hot day when he's riding by and persuade him to drink some water.
Sweet pea. You could do so much better.
But however she pulls this off, within a few months of what they just saw happen, little Hangleton got the, like, sit there with the popcorn, enjoy the huge scandal of the squire's son running off with the tramp's daughter. And you know that everybody's just got to be like, how the fuck does that happen?
Especially with as shallow as he seems like he is.
Not seems like. I'm just going to go with
shallow,
is.
yeah.
And as Dumbledore describes, the most shocked person is Marvolo, who comes home after his 6 months in Azkaban and clearly expects that his daughter is just going to be dutifully waiting for him with a hot dinner ready.
Back off.
And he instead finds a clear inch of dust. That's a
Deuces.
lot of dust.
That is a lot of dust.
I mean, I'm sure that there was
was
probably
already
like
dirty.
3/4 of an inch when he left.
Yeah.
But a clear inch of dust and a farewell note where she explains what she had done. I wonder how much detail she went into. Like, did she write, I gave Tom a love potion and we ran off together? Or did she say, we're in love and I left? Like,
You know,
how
the
much
more
of her
romantic
delusion,
aspect
yeah.
is going to be we're in love and I left. She has like some muggle romance novels under her pillow that she reads.
Definitely. And then Dumbledore says that everything I could find from this point on shows me that he never mentioned her name or even acknowledged her existence ever again. Like,
I mean, she barely existed to him before,
right.
so it
So,
doesn't surprise
like,
me.
no, he doesn't have a daughter.
That makes me sad that she even decided
To leave a note?
to name Tom after him. Like, she at least had some amount of respect enough for her dad that she uses his name in Tom's name. So this whole scenario is making me very sad.
I mean, it's all she had. So I'm sure on some twisted level, she did love her father.
Yeah. I mean, Stockholm Syndrome is real.
Yeah.
So it just makes me sad.
But Dumbledore says that the shock of it seems to have led to an early death, or that perhaps he just never
learned
to feed himself.
I like that line so much.
Because he does die before Morphin ever returns home.
Which he was there for 3 years, so he was there for 2.5 years more after Marvolo got home, so.
Be kind of funny. I mean, I doubt it. And not funny, haha, but ironic funny. It'd be kind of funny if he almost made it and then didn't. But all things considered, I don't think he made it that long.
No, especially if he forgot how to feed himself.
Yeah. But then Harry wants to know more about Merope because he knows that she died and Voldemort was raised in an orphanage. And Dumbledore says, yes, like that part we know is fact, but we're getting into even more of a realm of guesswork here. Because from what he has been able to find out, it was within a few months of that scandalous runaway marriage that Tom Riddle returned home, sans wife, and would only talk about being hoodwinked and taken in. So Dumbledore theorizes that what he meant by that was he was under an enchantment that had been lifted, but he's not going to use those words with the villagers and his family because they might think he's insane.
I kind of think that maybe she just didn't even tell him. That maybe he felt like after she told him she was pregnant, that was how she hoodwinked him.
Maybe he really genuinely believed that.
Yeah, genuinely.
I don't know, because he could be saying hoodwinked and taken in and just not fully understanding what had happened to him.
Maybe.
But it is also entirely possible that she told him all of the truth.
And he doesn't want anybody to think he's crazy.
And he doesn't want them to, that's what Dumbledore is theorizing, that he doesn't want them to think he's insane. And I'm sure they already do think he's insane because he fucking ran off with the tramp's daughter.
I wonder if he tells his parents that they have a grandson.
I'm honestly not sure he knows that at this point.
Yeah, he might not.
After
think she's
everything,
not
even
pregnant.
if she said it,
he might not.
we're
believe
pregnant.
her.
He might not believe her after everything else.
Yeah, how pregnant was she? Was she like?
I mean, it couldn't have been that much
Very
because it
early
was
pregnant?
within a few months.
Yeah.
The villagers had all assumed that she was pregnant, and that's why he married her. But they still then had to assume that he had slept with her.
Yeah.
The tramp's daughter. Like, they already do have to think he's insane. So no, he's not going to start talking about having some sort of magic spell cast on him. Like, he's just not going to do that. Anyway, Harry's just like, but she was pregnant. Like, she did have his baby. We know that. And Dumbledore says, yeah, it was a year after they were married. So she was like freshly pregnant when he left.
Yuck.
And
I don't like that phrase.
sorry.
Freshly pregnant.
They had just popped that bun in the oven. And Tom left while she was pregnant. Harry wants to know why the love potion stopped working. And Dumbledore again says, honestly, I think that Merope loved her husband so much that she didn't want to keep enslaving him magically. And she made the choice to stop giving him the potion, maybe thinking that
He'd
stay. Maybe after all this time, he grew to love her.
Yeah,
or
so sad.
maybe he would have stayed for the sake of the baby. Either way, he didn't. And so my thought is she decided to stop giving him the potion. Told him
She was pregnant.
a certain level of truth because, I would imagine that by that point she was doing more magic.
Like around the house, yeah.
Yeah. So
Or
he
wherever
had
they're
to, and I don't think you forget things under the love potion.
It doesn't seem like it from the
'Cause-
way they did it with Jacob and Queenie.
And Ron, later in this book,
Yeah.
he looks horrified after the
Yeah.
fact. Like, he seems to remember what went down.
And what he was thinking and all that.
Yeah, so I think that Tom Riddle would have come out of that and remembered all that he had essentially been forced to do.
Content warning. Yeah, she definitely raped him, which is
Right.
concerning. Definitely throw a big content warning there. But
Yeah.
she did. It was not consensual.
No.
It's like giving somebody a roofie. And
And I can't blame him for in that moment being like, no, I don't believe you. I'm getting the fuck out of here.
yeah.
I can't.
Yeah, I don't blame him either.
Yeah,
I just think that if maybe he had known about Tom.
maybe, but there are a lot of women who don't want to remember the child of their rapist.
I mean, that's fair, but I think it would be different with him because he seems a little bit like a narcissist, and I think to have a literal mini him,
Yeah.
it would have been...
Maybe had he known. I genuinely don't know that he believed her.
Yeah, I don't think he did.
And I don't think he
that's
would
why
have even
left
realized he had a son until his son showed up and killed him.
and was like, yo, yeah.
And honestly, his reaction then had to have been like, what the fuck? And then think about all of the trauma that could have triggered for him too.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't look anything like Merope. He looks like Tom.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think, judging by his character that we have seen so far, the narcissistic side of him would have been very happy to have Tom.
Yeah, but also no, because
I am saying this.
narcissists don't exactly make good parents.
No, they don't, but they think they do.
There is that.
So often women don't want to keep the babies
Because it reminds them of
because
their-
they see
Yeah.
them in them. He wouldn't see an ounce of that weak genetic
And it's
system.
not like he was the one who had to carry.
No,
It just, I can understand. I can understand
the leaving.
how I can totally understand
I
the
do think
leaving.
he's a douchebag.
Oh, he's absolutely a douchebag. Like, even if he had been like, I have to step up for my son now that I know. No.
He exists,
I
yeah.
genuinely don't think he knew for sure that he had a son.
Yeah, I think he thought she was lying. So he's like,
And I think
deuces.
that's understandable after
Yes.
everything else.
Why would I believe you now
Right.
with everything that you've been lying to me about? So, yeah.
But Dumbledore says that he never saw her again, never cared to discover what became of his son. So it could go either way. I am inclined to think he suspected but didn't believe.
Never
Didn't
inquired.
want to believe, possibly.
Don't ask, don't
but
tell.
he certainly went home and obviously never got married or anything again.
No, because
He was still living with his elderly parents when Voldemort found him as a
he
teenager.
was 16, yeah, when
Yeah.
he killed them. So, I mean, whatever. He's
Like,
probably
it
like
really-
shook.
Yeah, it really fucked up his life. And I'm sure there was possibly a level of karma there, but not
Nobody
not
deserves that.
deserved. No. But this is where Dumbledore decides to cut off their lesson, so to speak. Their experience. And says that he thinks that'll do for tonight. And Harry does stand, but doesn't leave yet.
He says that she dies, and he says something like she wouldn't even stay alive for her son.
He says that later. It's in another memory.
It is. It just breaks my heart so much. I think if she had lived, it would have been good for her, and it would have been good for Tom.
Yeah. Yeah. Although I feel like it would have been very unhealthy for her too, though.
But you look at your kid And it's just so much more. And I just really wish that she had that.
Yeah.
Because she barely got to see him before she died.
And I think the difference that you maybe aren't considering, because you are stable and
Well, that's true. That's
like,
true.
Like, you can appreciate that love for your child, and she was not in a place to be able to do that. Because by that point, she stopped taking care of herself. The one person that she believed that she loved abandoned her. She was on her own, pregnant for a really long time.
Yeah.
Like, she was a mess. And she wasn't good before that.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't have inbred genes in me.
You don't seem to.
I don't
Your
think
eyes
that
look
I have
normal. And
but it's just a whole different mindset that you get when you get a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to explain it further than that.
I mean, I can see it in you, so
It's so you just learn to love them so much deeper. And if she had just I feel like if she had just gotten like a few days with him, it would have made her life so much better.
yeah, I don't even know that I would use the term learn to. It's almost like you can't help but to.
Yes. A lot of.
But I think she was so weak.
She probably also would have gone through a lot of.
They said that she died within hours of giving birth.
She was
like
dead within
so
the
I
next.
think that she was so weak that she didn't have the strength to feel it.
I get it.
It's just it is so sad.
It is very
they
sad.
just didn't think we needed this. And we'll end up talking more about this when we get to this actual point, because it does really come up in another memory. Because we get quite a few of them in the book as opposed to like the one in the movie.
I do think that Harry at this point, he has great sympathy for Merope. Like, he feels...
Harry is a genuinely empathetic child.
He is, considering how he was raised. I'm very surprised.
I mean, I feel like that can go either way. It either puts you in a role where you become exactly like your abusers, or it puts you into a role where you don't want to be anything like them, and you know how other people feel, so you're more sympathetic towards it. And he definitely
has a lot of that.
Yeah,
And it's good that
and that's
he
probably
does have
a
a lot of
trait
that.
from his mom.
It is. And maybe Dad later, because James seems like he got it together and maybe figured out.
Yeah, I don't think James was an unsympathetic person, but I do think that he was so pampered and
was a
loved,
privileged
that,
white
yes,
boy.
I don't think that he was as capable of putting himself in other people's shoes.
Yeah. Because he had doting parents
Yeah.
that loved him.
Yeah.
And so.
And it makes a big difference. But then when you look at Snape,
Yeah.
he became more the type to be like his abusers than to have the sympathy for the
true.
others. But like I said, Harry stands and hesitates. He wants to know if it's important to know about Voldemort's past, and if all of this has something to do with the prophecy, which Dumbledore basically repeats what he says earlier, like, yeah, it's very important, and it has everything to do with the prophecy. But he doesn't explain why it's important or what it has to do with the
Not
prophecy.
yet.
Not
Not
yet.
yet.
He just says it does. And even though Harry's confused because he's not seeing the connection yet, the fact that Dumbledore is reassuring him here works. And he does feel reassured. So he's like, okay, can I tell Ron and Hermione what I've learned tonight?
You should.
And Dumbledore decides that Mr. Weasley and Miss Granger are trustworthy and can know, but that he needs to make sure nobody else does, because it wouldn't be good if word got out about how much he knows or suspects about Lord Voldemort's secrets. Because obviously Dumbledore knows exactly where this is going, and if that gets out and other people could start putting it together too, it could get back to Voldemort, who could take more measures that Dumbledore doesn't know about yet. So I do get why Dumbledore refuses to put his eggs all in one basket. And
Yeah.
like I said, with that great power, and in this case, as knowledge, comes great responsibility.
He's Spider-Man.
But Harry's just like, I'll make sure it's only Ron and Hermione. And he says goodnight, turns to leave, but notices an ugly gold ring set with a large cracked black stone and says, "You were wearing that the night we visited Slughorn." And Dumbledore says, "I was."
Indeed.
And Harry says, "That was the same ring Marvolo Gaunt showed Ogden." And again, he's like, "It was." Harry's like, "Have you always had it?" Dumbledore says, "I acquired it very recently. Just before I came to fetch you from your aunt and uncle's, in fact." And Harry's like, doing his meddling, putting two and two together. "That would be around the same time you injured your hand, sir."
Indeed.
Dumbledore's like, "Yes." And Harry's just like, "And how was that?" He's like, "You'll hear that story another
Later.
time. Good night." And that is where the chapter ends.
And thus we end.
And thus we end, because not even a drop of it. No, not like you said, no illusion.
Not
no
even a
whisper,
mention to the
nothing.
Gaunts.
Like, we don't know who the Gaunts are. They don't exist according to the movies.
Well, Voldemort just appeared out of thin air.
Right.
Tom. Tommy boy. What you doing? Where'd you come from? Where did you go? Did you see him, Cotton Eye Joe? Cotton Eye Tom? I can't believe they leave all this out.
All of it. Like, I get that it was a really long scene and it was a really dark scene. Like, absolute content warning. But
Yes.
when you realize just how fucked up the Gaunts are and how abused Merope was and how, like, all of the incest, and then ultimately she drugs and rapes Tom Riddle for months. Like,
For the hope of a happy life.
I mean,
which is so sad.
it was not the right thing to do, but I do understand why it came about.
Her brain is thinking she can have a happy life.
Hoping she can. But, like, yeah, it's very dark.
Mm-hmm.
This is
But it needs
oof chapter.
it needed to be pointed out, because a lot of the stuff that Voldemort eventually does, it starts right here.
Right. And I know there's a lot of theories that Voldemort couldn't love because he was born of a love potion, but I think that the author debunked that. I think she thought if he had been able to grow up with a loving mother, it would have made all of the difference in his life.
I think it would.
Yeah.
But this being left out is an atrocity.
It does such a disservice to the Potterheads.
It does a disservice to... we talked about this in the last episode, how the character development in this movie
100%.
is off. Voldemort's just evil because he's related to Salazar Slytherin. Like, Slytherin wasn't even necessarily evil. Like, from...
Slytherin had some backward views,
He did.
but not evil.
From reading a little bit of what I've read on the Wizarding World, he and Godric were like besties. So there had to be something good about him to have started this. Yeah, did he get pissed off and have the biggest tantrum of his lifetime and leave a monster to kill people? Yes, he did.
Well, and I think if you look at it further back, when the wizards have to adopt the statute of secrecy to protect themselves from muggles who were freaking out, like, I can understand why there would be animosity between muggles and wizards.
Well, yeah, but
now, does that make wizards better than muggles? No. So it gets twisted. But I can understand where it might have started.
Putting it in a castle full of children is probably not the best place to put it, sir. And also, don't kill people. Just don't.
Yeah. So much. There's so much emotion. There's so much depth to the story. There's so much character building. There's so much simple little things like how Harry reacts and how you see more about who Harry is by how he reacts. You see just how much Dumbledore is omniscient. You see just how fucked up Merope's life was to do what she did to Tom. You see how...
You see that she actually did it to Tom.
Yeah.
Like, you don't even get a glimpse of Tom in this at all. Except we get, 11-year-old Tom in the orphanage. That's it.
Yeah, we'll get that later. And we'll talk about it then. It's just so much in this one chapter that they were literally like, nah, we don't need this.
They don't even do it in like deleted scenes or anything.
No,
they
just literally were like, we don't need this.
Who wrote this? Get out. You, David.
Yeah, the screenwriter is Steve Kloves, and he tried to add in other scenes in this movie, like
I guess,
Dumbledore reminiscing about a past girlfriend and shit like that. Like,
he gay?
yeah, that's exactly how it came out. But it's just, I think he's a very good writer. Like, the movies flowed well, and as a standalone movie, the sixth one is probably one of the most successful.
It's funny, and like I said in last week's episode, it's like a teen comedy almost.
Right, but as something from source
Following
material,
the book, no.
Woof, it was not what I hoped for in
Not
any
at
way,
all.
shape, or form. And it really hit me writing the summary for this and thinking, like, none of it. Like, not even one short memory where we just see her being treated awful in a brief glimpse of Tom Riddle. Like, they could have done that in minutes.
No, thank you. No.
I just can't wrap my head
I
around
know.
it.
It's stupid.
Which is why we would like your opinion on it.
Mm-hmm.
So our Potter Pondering is going to be, what are your thoughts on the entire backstory of the Gaunts being omitted from the movie? Find the post on our Facebook page and share your thoughts. Or call us at 216-526-6792 and leave your response as a voicemail. Make sure you start off telling us your name and then go into your answer. Don't forget you can also stitch your response on TikTok.
We really look forward to seeing, reading, and hearing them. This week we have a wizarding word, and we want to talk about the documentary that came out about Daniel Radcliffe's stunt double, David Holmes, who was paralyzed during the filming of Deathly Hallows Part 1.
Because we didn't talk about enough dark stuff this
No,
episode.
we didn't.
But I've actually been meaning to watch this documentary, so this is like my reminder to go do it.
It's been out for a hot minute. It's
Been a few months.
Yeah, so Daniel Radcliffe made the documentary, which I love. He was very passionate about this guy who was his stunt double, and he got hurt on set during Deathly Hallows Part 1. And he's been paralyzed from the chest down since that happened. So from what I read, he was rehearsing a flying scene, and they pulled him back. And when they pulled him backwards at speed, he hit a wall. And he
immediately broke his neck.
It immediately broke his neck is what it says. So, yeah, we're giving you little spoilers for it. But I think the documentary is about overcoming this moment and not making it his whole life. So, I'm sure the guy's name is David Holmes. He's now 42. And he's been paralyzed from the chest down since. It just changed everything for him. And this documentary just shines a light on him as a person, and I think how much he meant to Daniel.
The friendship that they built up.
Yes, and it's really a sweet title. It's called David Holmes, The Boy Who Lived. Oh, it says the article that we're reading is on The Independent, and we'll share the article, but it says that he was regularly visited by Daniel as well as Tom Felton in the hospital. That's so sweet.
And Daniel actually threw a charity auction and dinner to raise money for his medical bills. Calls him an incredibly important person in his life. Obviously, it's sad, but it sounds like it's supposed to be uplifting. So it's been on my list of things to watch and just finding time to do that. Yeah, it's tough.
If you're in the U.S., it's on HBO Max, and you can stream it. I'm not sure if you're in another area like Australia or the UK. I'm not really sure if it's on streaming services around there. But if it is, let us know so we can let people know.
It premiered on HBO on Wednesday, November 15th, 9 p.m. and is now available to stream on Max in the US, and UK viewers can stream it on Sky Documentaries and now starting from 18th of November. So
yeah, we're a little behind on this one. But it's good news to have in case you didn't know it came out. I mean, this is a really interesting documentary that kind of shines a different light on Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Okay, let me go back.
And like we said, we'll share this on our Facebook page so that you
Absolutely.
may read it too, and not just our brief summary of it. That'll bring us to this week's trivia question. What other subjects are nonverbal spells now required in?
What are the beginning?
The first one who responds with a correct answer in the code word #QuietWizard will get a sticker.
Another way to get a sticker is to rate and review us through iTunes. If you don't have an Apple account, then you can write us a recommendation on our Facebook page. Make sure to email us at foxsakepod@gmail.com and let us know you did, and we'll get back to you to figure out which sticker you want and where to send it.
Don't forget to find us and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at FoxSakePod. Following us on Podbean at FoxSakePod will get you the episode as early as possible and give you a leg up in answering the trivia question. You can also go to our website at forfoxsakepodcast.com to check out our For Fox's Sake and Harry Potter related merchandise for sale.
Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, where we post our weekly podcast episodes, cooking show episodes, vlogs, bloopers, and other random videos.
If you would like to become a patron, you can find us on Patreon at Fox's Sake Pod. Patronage starts at $2 and will get you some awesome perks like For Fox's Sake swag, access to our Discord channel, chats, and more. Check out our page for the details. Any support you can give is greatly appreciated. And join us next week when we talk about the first half of Chapter 11, Hermione's Helping Hand, and the corresponding film scenes.
Thanks for listening. Hope you hear us again. I'm Carly.
I'm Ellen, and we are
For Fox's Sake.